our purposes of school classification and monitoring and reporting on student performance in the aggregate.
In the aggregate. So these are just general groupings of people, correct?
Correct. Not the only student identifiable information that we report to anyone other than the districts or the schools, and of course through them to parents, is migrant education data.
Migrant, can you explain that, please?
The law requires, because migrant children move from state to state regularly.
Law, you said law?
Federal law. Then that we have to report individual student data at the individual student level in order to, so that they can provide services and support for kids crossing state lines. Other than that, we report no individually student identifiable data to the federal government.
Dr. Sloan of Francis Howell talked about the increasing rigor of Common Core, the collection of data, the collaboration of teachers and professional development, and then she requested some type of policy for flexibility of teacher contracts and teacher tenure to include, and then she went on to talk about having teachers have 2 hours of prep in order to take care of Common Core and other best practices and increasing rigor. Don't you think that if we added an extra hour on each teacher's prep, that we would have to be required for more teachers, and that would be an increase of cost of Common Core?
I don't know that I could follow that logical sequence of steps. I think there's too many variables that would impact that. So,
do you think teachers need 2 hours of prep in order to facilitate Common Core?
Let me just say, I don't think teachers have enough time for collaboration and preparation. And as a superintendent myself years ago, we worked very hard to try to provide them with more time for those activities within the school day or within the work day. If that's what Dr. Sloan is talking about, certainly I would agree that's always desirable.
That's all I have right now.
Representative Collins.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something. When we talked earlier about budget, DESE's budget from 2009 through 2014 from all funds was an increase of 156 million. From general revenue only, it was 104 million. So it has increased from 2.9 billion to 3 billion over that time period. So we have definitely increased funding.
Well, and I'm sure that total funding, that's correct, because we've increased you've increased your contribution to the formula. I thought you were asking about the department operation itself.
No, I meant money that we're putting into education.
Point, absolutely.
I'll take this for a second to just maybe clarify some of the things that are going on here. I also sat on an investigative committee this summer that looked into the Department of Revenue. And we found it, and I'm not holding you responsible for the Department of Revenue, but we found some half-truths, some shading of issues, particularly on personal information. And that alarms our citizens. It alarms them a great deal, and it particularly alarms them when it's their children and information on their children. You're a mom, you're a grandma, you know these things. So I think, you know, that's one of the big concerns I hear from parents in my district constantly. What are they passing on to the federal government about my child that maybe they don't need to know to measure his or her accomplishments in a classroom?
I could not agree more, and it is a concern that I think we share, and we do everything that we possibly can to protect the integrity of those data. In fact, we even tried to protect our data from the state of Missouri. Because when I was first commissioner, we asked that we could to have an independent system because we were operating on our own servers in our own data world, and we wanted to keep that separate from the state system. And the argument that we made for not being a part of the state system was that we didn't believe those people who in OA or whoever in data services had clearance under FERPA to even have access to that information. So and that's how far we'll go to try to protect it.
Well, I know, and if you got to the bottom of it, apparently it was a clerk in OA that gave CCW information to the feds. So are there protections there? I don't know, I'm not an IT person, but I know that when we are collecting those kinds of things from people, they need every assurance that they can have that it will remain where it's supposed to be. So, I mean, my recommendation would be make absolutely sure what you're asking is what you need and not just, well, it would be nice to know.
We go through the list regularly. In fact, we went through it last year and took some things off the list that we didn't think we needed to collect and that we had no legitimate purpose for. And then we ended up putting most of those back in because of a statute that was passed. So, what we've done is break down, and when I provide you with the list, you'll see we've got every data point that we require, the reason we require it, whether it's based in state law, federal law, the accountability set, whatever the reason is, and we've cited that on that list. So we look at that all the time. As laws change, we add to or take away from, and sadly, from my point of view, it seems like we just keep adding to the list. And I wish we were going the other way, but
Thank you.
Representative Davis,
To inquire, please.
proceed.
Could you explain to me how this is going to affect my parochial schools, my private schools, and my large number of homeschool students in my district? We homeschool my daughter for 12 years, and now my two boys go to Webb City School District, which is a fantastic school district for my kids. They do a good job. But I have a lot of families, probably a larger percentage proportionally than the rest of the state, that the kids go to parochial school, but especially homeschool. How do you think that the Common Core state standards is going to affect those students?
the same way it will in public schools, in that the private schools and the parochial schools establish their own curriculum, and in that case, they also establish their own assessments. So we know, for example, that the Archdiocese has, at least in St. Louis, I'm not sure about Missouri, but at any rate, many of the archdioceses around the country have adopted the Common Core, meaning that they've changed their standards that they're holding their kids responsible for, and I would assume following upon that, we'll be changing their curriculum and their assessments as well. Those are decisions that they make. We don't regulate or have any very limited interaction with private and parochial schools. Having said that, I do know that some of them access our website, they look at our materials, they use some of our resources, and that's a good thing, because we provide those to serve the children of Missouri, and irrespective of wherever they go to school, if they can find some value in what we're providing, that's a good thing. Homeschool parents also, my stepdaughter homeschools her children, and I know she and I have had conversations about the Common Core, and she spent a considerable amount of time actually going through those standards, because she, as you might suspect, wanted to make sure that first of all, that her kids were learning the things that somebody was going to expect them to know, even if it's not in their K-12 education, it may be in higher education, that they're going to need to be responsible for certain things. So she went through and reviewed all that, but that's up to her. As the mom who's homeschooling her kids, she's got to make those calls about what it is her kids learn and what material she uses and how they're exposed. So I would say overall, will it influence them? It very well could. because all of those folks are interested in having their children prepared at least at the level that public school kids are prepared. In most cases, they shoot higher than that, but they're gonna wanna know what the floor is.
Because and the reason I asked it is there's a large percentage of people that I have talked to that says that they're so concerned about CCSS that if it's implemented, they're gonna homeschool their kids. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds just from my school districts, which I have 3 school districts. And that on top of the number that are homeschooling them currently is going to really affect our school districts. And I think that's something that should be a concern. You were a superintendent of where?
Riverview Garden School District and Hazelwood School District, 2 North St. Louis County. Back to your point about urban education, I've spent 30 years of my life working on trying to fix urban schools, so.
So you're superintendent what years?
I'm sorry, 15 years from, when did I come here? 2009, 15 years before that.
Okay. All right.
And an assistant superintendent for 11 prior to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Started as a history teacher.
Thank you.
American history, by the way.
Representative Morris,
To inquire,
proceed.
thank you, sir. How does that make you feel that, kind of following up on Representative Davis's comment about, and because I've had several people in my district talk about homeschooling and the need to homeschool. I read you one reason why one person does it, and now we have other people wanting to think about doing that because of the Common Core. They just don't trust it or don't like it, don't understand it, I don't know. And now you've got a daughter-in-law. You being such an educator and superintendent and all the things that you've achieved in your life and done for children, and now you've got a daughter-in-law that's that chooses to homeschool, and you're the head person, in education. So how do you? I know you all want to get along, families, we get along, but how does that make you feel? We must be failing her?
No, well, in her case, I think it's a religious decision based on her faith and her own personal preference for how her children are educated. I certainly respect that. I think every parent has a right to determine how their kids are educated and where they go to school. I think it's the state's responsibility to ensure that we have quality educational options for kids. And in some cases, that's going to be a public school district. In other cases, in our state and others, it's going to be a charter school. But parents always have the right to opt into another system.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, and I, the answer, for your daughter, her decision, it may be that, and that's a good reason. I saw a film not too long ago about the beginning of education, 100 years of education, and where we started our country in education and how God was involved in every aspect of our education. The first universities were all Christian universities and things like that, and the first spelling primers, the little primers, spelling bee primers, the very first part was the 10 Commandments, and obviously as God has been taken out of the school system, our school system is actually failing, has gone down. So I know we can't always do the things that we want to because we have the federal government, because we have to get all the federal dollars, and so it kind of ties you up. But as a leader of education, I would tell you that if there's any way that you can get some type of religion values back into our school system, that would be good. But that's not what I want to ask you about. I got 2 or 3 other questions. So do you feel that you all should get parental permission for some of the questions and data tracking that you all are doing today? I mean, do you feel like that you should ask parents before the children answer some of the questions that they have and some of the data control programs and processes that you have? Should you be asking parents for their permission?
If we were collecting private personal information, perhaps, but we're not. I know last year this topic came up